Sorry about that. All right, there we go. Okay, so thank you so much, Tom. And let me adjust my screen here to get set up. And I'm going to be talking a little bit about our COVID-19 and LGBT travel research that we did both in May 2020 and the update we did in October 2020. And we intend to do this every 6 months just to keep updating the industry and what's going on in the mind of the LGBTQ traveler. So really quickly, these are sort of shorter research projects. It was an 8-minute online survey that we first did in May 14th through 19th in 2020. And what we're trying to do is actually track the same group of people. So we had about 1,800 people who are self-identified members of the LGBTQ community living in the United States back in May. And then we went back to those 1,800 people and we actually got 1,342, which is a really great response rate to retake the survey in October. And just as a side note, the demographic profile is really exactly the same between the two groups. There's only like plus or minus 1% in the major demographic markers. So it really was sort of the same group of people. So I want to talk a little bit about the results. I'll talk a little bit about some of the differences between May and October and what we're seeing right now in the mindset of the LGBTQ travelers. So the first thing is just, we asked some questions about financial impact. And, we have this impression sometimes, and we often hear in the media about COVID-19 being a negative fiscal impact for people. And it certainly is for an awful lot of people. But one thing that we really can see with COVID, and we see this in the stock market, we see this with corporations, is that there's winners and losers with COVID-19 in the past year. And a lot of people have not had necessarily a huge fiscal impact. So what I really want to stress is that don't get into your mindset that everyone in the LGBT community is worse off financially this year than they were last year, because it's simply not true. That's true with all populations right now. There's just been winners and losers, and that's unfortunate. But there is income and there is savings out there to travel in the future. We also want to talk a little bit about pent-up demand. So we asked this in both May and October, and we are finding now that about 75% of LGBTQ participants have extreme or moderate desire to travel again. And that percentage has actually increased 6% since May of 2020. We're seeing sort of the increases across all demographics. And we only have about 9% of the community that says they really have no desire to travel again. So again, there's this pent-up desire to travel. And I'm sure a lot of people on this call, including myself, feel that way. We asked also a little bit about the travel this past summer. So last May, we asked questions about what are your hopes to do over the next 6 months over the extended summer travel season. And then this in October, we asked, what did you actually do? So this is sort of a half empty, half full sort of question, is that 46% of the LGBT participants indicated taking at least one overnight vacation trip during the extended summer. And given the situation, I think that's pretty good. And I think it probably stacks up well against the general population market too. But the key is that it was really travel by car. And that's the thing that I think is really unusual about what's going on with this pandemic, is that we've become sort of car vacation travelers and not air vacation travelers. That's not to say that there isn't any air travel going on out there, but there's this real emphasis. So for example, of all the participants, of all 1,400 people, 12% said they took one vacation trip by airplane, which might not be so bad given the situation, but 40% took at least one vacation trip by car, right? So it's a big difference, right? So it's almost a 4-to-1 ratio of car vacations versus plane vacations. So that really stresses sort of the importance of car vacations for all the destinations that we work with. I think that was interesting in May we asked how far are you willing to travel by car for a vacation? And a lot of my destinations that we work with, I think that their car sort of that the car area is like a 2 to 4 hour drive, and people aren't willing to travel more than 4 hours. But the research in May really showed is that people were willing to travel 8 hours or more in car for vacation to avoid that airplane trip. So whatever your destination's assumption is about how far people are willing to travel to get to you, it's probably expanded right now. That's really important. The other thing I really want to point out here is, like, where do the people actually go? And I think the big losers this summer were big cities, and also particularly international vacations. So you can see only 1% indicated leaving the United States for an outside USA vacation. And only 13% went to big city metro areas, which is really quite small on our tracking polls as far as urban vacations. So they were the losers in the LGBT market. Who weren't losers, though, were things like outdoor adventure vacations, and small town vacations. And interestingly, I actually went back to the research in 1998, and they actually did fine. I mean, they were actually comparable to what was happening in 2018. I mean, so there is that big trend, is that people feel a little bit safer going to places that are a bit less crowded. But I'll talk about those kind of issues a little bit later, because what I really do contend, and what Miami was very much talking about today, is that any destination can be a small town. Any destination can have outdoor adventure activities. It's really about the pivot and the marketing. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. All right, then we also about future travel this winter, spring. So we asked, between the period of November 1st, 2020 and April 30th, what are your thoughts? So 63%, a little bit more than half, hope to take a trip over the next 6 months. Now, I need to say this was done more late October, and things have turned a little bit from the worst since this particular research was done. We're hearing a lot more about case spikes across the United States right now. So it'll be interesting to see how this holds up over time. But people are interested in a wide variety of destinations, including big cities and small towns and beach destinations. But I think the key here in the lower left is planning. Is that we asked people who said that if they're going to take a vacation, have you actually planned it yet? And only 30% said they had made any plans, and those plans they did make were mostly in November and December. It's wide open for what happens after January 1st, and we saw that back in May. People back in May said that they were going to take a vacation, but they didn't know when they were going to take a vacation, and whatever vacation they were going to take was probably going to be very short term as far as planning. So I think that's what we have to expect this winter too, is that most of the vacations are going to be sort of, planned 2 to 4 weeks in advance, not really far in advance. Then you have to be flexible and ready to, to take advantage of whatever opportunities allow for destinations as this pandemic goes through our communities in different rates. Also about future travel, cisgender men and women were about equal in their intention to take a vacation over the next 6 months. But there was some generational differences. Young people are just a little bit more open to traveling right now than baby boomers. Again, not surprising given what's happening with the pandemic, but that is something I think many people can keep in mind, is that young people are just a little bit more open to taking these travel risks a little bit. So maybe that's more geared towards your marketing efforts. All right, car versus airplane vacation over the next 6 months. And, for those of that who are planning a vacation, most are really leaning towards car vacations right now. Now, it's a really different atmosphere, though. Car vacations in the summer are a lot easier for a lot of parts of the country than car vacations in the middle of the winter. So that's something to keep in mind, too. But only 37% of the participants were willing to take a plane vacation, not this year, not this winter, but through the end of 2021. And if you notice on the right-hand side, we asked everyone, when are you likely to take your next airplane vacation? And the majority of people said they need to wait and see what's going to happen with this pandemic. So there's still a lot of apprehension about air travel, even here in the United States. I mean, on the left-hand side, we told us, well, where are you thinking about taking the vacation? 73% said that it was going to be driving distance from their home. And then there are definitely about a quarter of the people, which is consistent with the earlier research, that are sort of open to a plane vacation. I think what's interesting about these slides is that the length of the time in the air doesn't seem to matter that much. Those 25% that are open to the air vacation are open to longer trips too, right? But that emphasis is still on the dry vacation this winter. But again, if you're in Minnesota and you're in Boston, you might want to jump on a plane to Fort Lauderdale or Miami because you're looking for that traditional warm weather destination. All right, airline safety. 19% of the community members felt very or mostly safe on a plane right now, which means that the other 80% still have some apprehensions, and about 55% still don't really feel safe or comfortable. And we get on the right-hand side, we said, what can the airlines do to make you feel more safe? And the key here is airline crews enforcing wearing masks at all time. And we hear that a lot of both our qualitative and quantitative research right now, is this concept of enforcing. So I think one of the things that many travelers are skeptical about is that sometimes these policies could be in place, but are you truly enforcing these policies with 100% of your guests and staff? And that's something that people really want in the LGBTQ community. So that's something to keep in mind too. It's more than just having policy, it's enforcing it, and for also the guests to be seeing that it's being enforced and that that enforcement is posted can be really, really important. And I think it's interesting, like 81% would like to see the middle seats continue to be unsold. I think I would love to have that policy even before COVID, but nonetheless, that is something that also is pretty high. All right, so if we look at 55% not feeling safe or comfortable for airline travel, that drops a lot for hotels. So people are more comfortable staying in hotels. Only 38% said that they were very or mostly comfortable and safe, but a big number also said they were somewhat. So again, when we're looking at what people are looking for from the hotels, it's this concept of enforcement that all guests are properly wearing masks, and that the staff are wearing face coverings, and there's an increased disinfection within the rooms. So as much as the airline is a little bit more negative, I think these numbers for hotels really aren't so bad. I think people are open to going to hotels and experiencing hotels as long as they're reinforced that the hotel is taking safety seriously. We also asked the type of hotels. So, if you're planning a vacation, which types of accommodations are you looking to book? And I'm actually talking today from Palm Springs, and it was interesting this past summer and early fall. Palm Springs actually did pretty well, quite frankly. Our city was actually pretty active. Our hotels, average rates were actually reasonably high. And I think that's because Palm Springs is a little bit more of a small town outdoor destination. And we saw that a lot of small town outdoor destinations actually did pretty well this summer. So I think type of hotels matters too. So I think it's interesting here that the type of hotels that people are most comfortable with were small hotels or hotels with minimal or no public areas, and also Airbnb and VRBO kind of rentals. And then these larger hotels actually came down the list. And I feel bad for large hotels. I mean, large hotels are really contending with the lack of convention and meetings right now, and just having a lot of room and a lot of extra space that they need to both fill and pay for. Sometimes these smaller hotels and motels are actually doing pretty well during the pandemic, because they're sort of the preferred hotel, and they also have fewer rooms to fill. Gives them really a competitive advantage. And then we also asked about activities while traveling on vacation. So I think this is interesting, probably not surprising to everyone, but the type of activities that people really wanted to do was hiking for an outdoor trail. People were very comfortable with this. Visiting urban parks or gardens, walking in urban streets and neighborhoods, visiting beaches. These are the kinds of activities that are a little bit more open, a little less crowded, that people were very comfortable and somewhat comfortable. You go down to the bottom of the list, visiting moderately crowded bars or nightclubs, or going to indoor concerts or theater or casinos, or being on a public subway or bus. People are still very uncomfortable with. What's interesting between now and last May is that as we all have become a little bit more used to living with this pandemic, is that the very comfortable and somewhat comfortable levels have really increased for these outdoor activities on the top, like hiking and visiting urban parks and visiting beaches. But if we go on the other side of the scale and we look about these indoor activities at the bottom, they haven't budged. They're equally not feeling safe as they were past May. So that is a big difference, is that I think we've all lived with the pandemic for a little bit. We've all been going to stores. We've all been taking hikes or going bike rides at home or getting out. And we're more and more comfortable doing those activities on vacation also. But a lot of the activities that we're still not doing at home, like going to crowded bars or taking public transportation, we're still not feeling safe about that in other areas. So as I'm talking to my different clients, a lot of our clients are really urban oriented. We've really talked about the pivot. And I think one thing that is unfortunate about LGBTQ travel in this time is that the traditional message for LGBTQ travel has been the group experience. We have been really, as urban destinations, promoting pride, LGBTQ events, the LGBTQ neighborhood. We've been promoting getting together with your community. And that has been the LGBTQ tourism message since I've started in this field 20 years ago. So it's a harder pivot, quite frankly. We haven't really pivoted. We haven't really talked about sort of the couple individual experience when we come to our destinations. And a lot of our destinations are starting to do that because no matter where you are, if you're in Miami or you're in San Francisco, there are a lot of great outdoor, less crowded things that you can do, be it at urban parks, be it at beaches, be in hiking in older historic neighborhoods. There are lots of opportunities in all big cities to get away from other people and feel safe, but it's a very different message than we've traditionally done. There's another dynamic in the LGBTQ community that I think is interesting with this, is that if you look at the research at any given moment, lesbian and bisexual women are more likely to be in a relationship than gay and bisexual men. And traditionally, the message to women has been a little bit more couple oriented, a little bit more outdoor adventure oriented. And the message around COVID actually may work well with women. But the message, particularly that we've given gay men over time, has been very much community oriented, around other people messages, and also acknowledging that there's a lot of single gay men. So talking about nightlife and dating and all that side of stuff that involves potentially more risk during a time of COVID. So I think that's something you're going to have to get a little bit of a handle on too, is that sometimes this message that the pivot needs to happen right now maybe will resonate a little bit better with the women's community than the men's community. And you need to decide a little bit about how you are going to message to men with this new pivot that hasn't been your traditional message to gay and bisexual men, right? But still can be out there. There's, lots of couples out there. For me and my husband, when we go hiking, when we go on vacation, we're actually looking for that lesbian experience, and that is outdoor adventures and hiking. And we've been actually on many car adventures this particular summer. And vacations that were outdoor adventure vacations, and we had a great time, right? So looking for that couple, gay male couple, and also maybe talking a little bit about how small groups of friends or gay men have sort of clustered into bubbles of single gay men for socialization, maybe how those bubbles of gay men may want to travel together. So that's the key. These are short studies to give you a little bit more direction of what the LGBT community is thinking about travel in the time of COVID. We'll repeat this, I guess, at the end of spring to give you a better idea of what people are thinking about in the summer. Hopefully by the end of the spring, we'll start distributing vaccines. I'm sure we're not going to be quite ready for full out LGBTQ travel come May or June, but hopefully by the end of 2021, things will be coming a little bit back to normal. But it will also be interesting, not only for the LGBTQ community, but everyone, about how this experience of living through the pandemic has changed us and how that may change our future. Do we want to just jump back into our old patterns, or maybe it's changed us in a way more permanently? And that are some of the activities and questions that we're going to explore in April when we redo this study. So thank you so much. And if there's any questions, I'd love to hear.
All right, David, thank you.